So there's been quite a few interesting stories in regards to the Manchester United takeover coming out in the last few weeks. More about Sir Ratcliffe reconstructing his bid, putting in a new bid of around 1.5 billion for 25%, which does equate to the 6 billion valuation the Glazers have put on the club. But this would basically keep the Glazers in power, allow the Glazers to stay at the club longer, and Sir Ratcliffe, as a result, wouldn't be able to buy out the club for at least 5-6 years. Now, this is something I'm totally against. Full sale only. I want owners that are going to come in, clear the debt, completely get rid of the Glazers, and I personally want Qataris as the next owners. But there's been a lot of question marks with the Sir Ratcliffe news coming out. If the Qataris were going to up their bid, if they're going to do anything, is Sir Jim in the lead? If Qataris is Sir Jim in the lead? Is the Qataris in the lead and more? Now, Matt Lawton, who's been a pretty credible journalist throughout this takeover, I think he's definitely got briefs at the club, or at least on Sir Jim Ratcliffe's side, has come up with some basically news that I think is really interesting. I think this is a genuine good takeover story. Well, I wouldn't say the news is good, but I think the source and information is accurate on everything going on from Qatari side to Sir Jim's side. And I think, with the takeover, obviously NDAs being signed, you've got to take every information with a pinch of salt. But I do think Matt Lawton's been kind of credible, and he's spoken about the Qataris, why they're not going to increase their bid, news that Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid is being considered and more. But he's sort of gone into detail about the Qataris basically not believing the Sir Jim Ratcliffe story and basically thinking it's a game. And we're going to talk about this takeover news and then another story that's come out on the takeover, and then I'm going to share my thoughts. So I want to dive into Matt Lawton's story. He said the Qatari group will not increase its offer despite the threat of a new offer from Sir Jim Ratcliffe. Sources close to the group say the news of Ratcliffe's reconstructed offer constitutes another means of pressure intended to make them increase their offer. So essentially what he's saying is the Qatari group aren't interested in upping their bid, increasing their offer, just because Sir Jim Ratcliffe's reconstructing their bid. They think that this is just a tactic to basically put them under pressure to increase their bids. Basically, the Qataris, their side is kind of briefed, and we know this from Ben Jacobs and other sources, that they're not worried about Sir Jim Ratcliffe in the slightest. They know they can beat Sir Jim Ratcliffe out. And they know they've been played by the Glazers twice in the past. Before the end of the season, sort of April, May time, the Qataris put in 2 new bids because loads of news came out about Ratcliffe's new offer and how Ratcliffe was going to take the lead. And then that just resulted in the Qataris making a higher offer than a higher offer. And then it all went quiet. We went to this deadlock. There's part of me that thinks the Glazers would put out news that they're going to go with Sir Jim or have Sir Jim's new offer they're starting to favour as potential tactics to get Qataris to up their bid again. And the Qataris have basically said, we're not. The story continued on by saying sources close to the Qatari group say that the news of Sir Jim Ratcliffe's reconstructed bid amounts to another pressure tactic designed to make them increase their bid. So again, in other words, the Qataris have said they're not upping their bid. Qatari sources think they essentially are being played by the Glazers with all this Sir Jim Ratcliffe story, how Sir Jim Ratcliffe's reconstructing his bid, rumours that the Glazers like this. Qataris essentially think this is a tactic designed to make them increase their bid, and Qataris are staying firm. We're giving you 5.2 billion or whatever we've offered you. We told you this is our last offer. I take it or leave it offer. You can delay the process as much as you want. You can do this and that as much as you want. But the Qataris generally believe the Glazers obviously want a full sale. They want to sell to them and they can beat Sir Jim Ratcliffe out. And that basically this is a complete game by the Glazers. Now, the story continued on to say a few things, said the Glazers are considering Jim Ratcliffe's offer of 1.5 billion for a 25% stake as part of what could be a staged takeover at Old Trafford. One insider close to the process has described this offer from Ratcliffe as feasible. Now, we know Lawton Times generally does have a connection to either someone at Reign, someone close to the Glazers, or someone at Ratcliffe, because his takeover information has been pretty accurate, and then it ends up getting later confirmed by Mike Keegan, although I think no takeover information is completely accurate, and I think some things are deliberately leaked by the club. Maybe this story is maybe a brief to scare the Qataris, and I think that's definitely something that they did in the past, the club. I do think in terms of journalists, I think Lawton seems to be more credible. I think that Lawton's definitely got maybe some kind of connection to Sir Jim's side, and I think Mike Keegan's got some kind of connection to the Qatari side. I think they're the two sort of sources where I don't think they know everything. There's NDA signed. I don't think you can take what they say and think it's true, but I definitely think they're two of the better sources throughout this takeover that have been two prominent figures. And again, they're speaking about basically the Glazers being appealed by this 25% stake. Now, I'm in two minds about this. Part of me thinks, is this just a big Glazer game to pretend they're interested in this 25% stake, pretend they're interested in this, pretend they're interested in that, put this news out, make sure Qatar hear about it, make sure everyone hears about Sir Jim's new bid to basically pressure Qatar into upping the bid. I think the fact that everyone knows that Sir Jim's changing his bid to a 25% stake, it's come out so publicly with NDA signed, I think it definitely could be a negotiation tactic. But then another part of me goes, did the Glazers ever want to sell? I think, the Glazers knew they had to sell the club because there wasn't an offer for a minority stake until Sir Jim Ratcliffe's come along and basically said, I'll do anything to get the club, even if it gives you what you probably wanted in the long run, which was staying. I think the Glazers' goal has always been to stay at United. They've been looking for a minority investor at Man United for the last 3 seasons. They couldn't get that, so they put the club on the market for full sale. They got all these offers for full sale. I think they came to the conclusion that actually full sale was probably going to be the way they make the most money, and the Glazers are going to do whatever makes them the most money. So I've always thought, okay, it's definitely going towards full sale because they're not getting options for minority stake and all of that. But now the Glazers, there is rumours that they're actually more interested in keeping the club for a little bit longer, because they think they could sell the club for a lot more money in 2-3 years. Potentially the Glazers' intention isn't to sell the club, and maybe they are interested in Sir Jim Ratcliffe's offer. And I think that's when you're worried. You're thinking, okay, is their intention to sell the club or not? It's so hard to know what the Glazers' intentions are, but at the end of the day, whatever's going to motivate the Glazers' move is money. They will go with a minority offer if they generally believe they're going to get a lot more money for the club in 2 years, or they'll put out information that they're going to stay at the club and go for this minority offer as a tactic to scare the Qataris in, because what they really want is a 6 billion bid for the Qataris so they can cash out. Now, something that a lot of people haven't mentioned about Sir Jim's new bid is all 6 Glazer siblings have got to agree to it. 4 Glazer siblings want to sell to Qatar. Joe and Avram want to sell to Sir Jim. For something to happen, all 6 Glazer siblings have to agree to something, and that's the questionable thing. Will the Glazer siblings agree to a minority sale, or do they want a full sale? Now, another interesting thing said by Lawton of the Times is that the Qataris remain convinced that the 6 billion price tag for Manchester United is too high and are standing by the offer of 5 billion for 100% purchase, not least because Eric Ten Hag's side is firing on the pitch. The debt stands at about 1 billion, and the Old Trafford Stadium and training ground are in dire need of modernisation. And I'm with Sheikh Yassim, I'm with the Qataris here. There is no way that Manchester United is worth £6 billion. I think £5 billion is a very big bid, but unfortunately our owners are greedy. Ten Hag isn't doing well, things on the pitch aren't going well, there's a lot of problems off the pitch, the amount of money that needs to be spent, the amount of debt that needs to be cleared. Why would Sheikh Yassim up his bid from 5 to 6 billion now, especially how badly we started for the season? And I think the Glazers know that. I think the Glazers have seen how bad the start of the season is, how everything going wrong is making it harder and harder for them to get 6 billion out of the Qataris, that they might be playing this, make them know about Sir Jim's new offer, make them think that we're going to stay and we've got a minority offer, as maybe a big game to get a bigger bid from the Qataris. And what Lawton of the Times is reporting is essentially the Qataris aren't going to up their bid because they don't think it's worth upping the bid, and they think this whole Sir Jim Ratcliffe story is just a ploy to get them to up their bid. Whereas, obviously the Lawton of the Times is saying that the Glazers are generally considering Sir Jim Ratcliffe's bid. The Qataris don't believe it. The Qataris think this is all a big game, this is all a big play, that they're not actually considering Sir Jim's bid, and that's why they're not going to up their bid. They think that they're desperate to sell. So it's interesting, I think, and I think it's a good article from Matt Lawton, and it's basically saying, Sir Jim has changed his offer. That is being considered, but the Qataris aren't changing. And I think the Qataris are just putting 6 billion bid and save us. I want Qatar, but Qataris obviously got to look like strong businessmen, and they're basically saying, we told you this is our final offer. It still remains our final offer. You're doing crap on the field. Why should we up our bid? And that's the thing. The Glazers know that. The Glazers know it would make no sense for the Qataris to up their bid with how much money needs to be spent, how poor we are on the pitch at the moment. The value of the club is just going down. The Glazers know that, and I think they would be doing anything they can to try and get more money out of Qatar. I think this whole stunt of going quiet for months on end and ignoring the bidders was to try and get Qatar to cave. They've already got Qatar to cave twice on their bids and up it more. I think that they think that Qatar have potential to cave if they thought Sir Jim Ratcliffe was on the cusp. They know how much the Qataris want United. And I think that's what's stalling it. And part of me just thinks, Qatar, can you just pay 6 billion now and buy the club? I'm done with it. But then the other part of me is like, it's logical, and Qatar have every reason not to want to spend this kind of money on the club. So again, the takeover news is annoying. I feel like every story is kind of a nothing story, but I do think this was a big relevant story to basically say, Sir Jim has changed to a minority offer because Sir Jim is a rat. I think a man that says he's a so-called Manchester United fan that is now willing to basically buy 25% of the club and keep the Glazers on. I think, he'll do anything to own this club. He'll do anything to get in bed with the Glazers, and I think it's unacceptable. And the last thing I want is Sir Jim Ratcliffe staying with the Glazers. What has been revealed today is that is true. Sir Jim Ratcliffe is doing a minority offer. to stay with the Glazers. The fact that that's been so publicised with all the NDAs does make me think, could this just be a game to scare Qatar into reassessing their bid? If they hear that Sergeant Ratcliffe is reconstructing and reassessing their bid, maybe the Qataris will. The fact that it's so public with NDA signed, part of me thinks it's a negotiation game, and it seems that the Qataris aren't falling for it. I want the Qataris to up their bill. I want them to put $6 billion in. I want them to be the next owner of Man United, but at the same time, I don't blame them. I think they're sitting there. I think they know the Glazers are playing games, and they thought, why should we up our bid? So there was rumours of the Qataris upping their bid. There has been for a while. I think this story is more credible than the rumours saying the Qataris are going to up our bid. And I think this is going to be a long waiting game, because I don't think the Glazers ultimately want Sergeant Ratcliffe. I don't know if all 6 Glazer siblings will agree to that. I think the Glazers just want $6 billion out. And I think they realise they're not going to get $6 billion right now with how bad the club has been. And they're now thinking, is there a way we can stay in case the Super League happens, if this Champions League format happens, or can we cash out? And it's going to be a long process. I think it's going to be a grilling process. And I think it's either coming to an end and maybe Sergeant Ratcliffe's going to have the breakthrough, which I hope doesn't happen. I don't want Sergeant to be the next owner, or it's just going to drag on, and it is a stalemate to get $6 billion. But what I will say with this takeover, and I hope this update was clear, is it's boring. I'm fed up with it, and I really hope it ends soon. Please do smash a like, subscribe down below if you're new, share the video. Thank you for watching. Bye.